Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom. And today, a little later than usual, sorry, things happen, we are continuing our look through of the Fourth Doctor Adventure Series 8 with Fever Island by... I just blanked, wow. Jonathan Morris, directed by Nicholas Briggs. This story... Wow, we are gonna have issues today, I just know it. Anyway, Fever Island, once again, stars Tom Baker as the Doctor, Jane Slavin as Ann Kelso, and John Leeson as K9. Featured in the cast of this story are Gethin Anthony, David Rintoul, Beatrice Jones, Carolyn Seymour, and Barnaby Edwards. As always, I will be discussing spoilers, so if you haven't heard Fever Island yet, proceed with caution. And this was a fun story. There's no other way I can think of to describe it but fun. Like back in the first half of Series 8 with Planet of the Drashigs and the Enchantress of Numbers, Fever Island doesn't really tie into the Syndicate Master Plan, the overall series arc, but it's interesting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So, what's the plot? Directly after the end of Time's Assassin, which, just a little recap, the Doctor found out that one of the experiments going on Kemble and Time's Assassin created a chronon wavefront, a wave of time particles, and everyone that was experimented on in this experiment, their consciousness is still alive in this wavefront. So, in the climax of Time's Assassin, the Doctor took this wave and trapped it in the TARDIS with the intention of jettisoning it into the vortex to give this life form some form of existence. And he figured that life in the vortex would be the least torturous. Anyway, and that was the climax of Time's Assassin, and the end of the story is the Doctor jettisoning the wavefront. So this story, Fever Island, picks up where that story left off. The Doctor jettisons the chronon wave, and the force of it propels the TARDIS backwards through time. Also, meanwhile, while that introduction is going on, we are introduced to Jason Vane, a James Bond type, for lack of a better description, who has been having nightmares about his arch nemesis, a man named Okulov, who he killed before the story began. So he goes into his organization, a headquarters called the Creche. I'm ghosting over a lot of this, so yeah, once again, listen to this story. And his leader, the Commodore, tells him that Okulov is still alive and on Fever Island. And I really liked Gethin Anthony's performance. There's not much I can say about it here, but as we progress through this review, I'll get more into it when I get into the spoilers. Anyway, the TARDIS lands on Fever Island, and K9 starts malfunctioning. And he starts asking about these concepts, mainly dreams, and these concepts that a robot shouldn't have because, robots lack imagination. They are purely logic-based, which worries the Doctor. In fact, he has this great scene where, K9's talking about this, and the Doctor's sort of freaking out, and he's just smiling, and basically goes, "Doctor, why are you smiling?" It's like, "Oh, usually the more broad I smile, it's just to hide how worried I am." Which is really great. One of the things I've found, and I'm trying to remember if it comes up in this story. I think it comes up in the next story, but yeah, I guess I'll talk about it now. One of the things I love about Tom Baker's Doctor is that, in serious situations or darker situations, he can say something funny and make it work. There's no tonal whiplash, which is something that is actually really difficult to pull off. And like I said, Tom Baker does it superbly, and he makes it so easy. Also, as I talked about, this story focuses, at least in the beginning, on K9. Now, I like K9 okay. He wouldn't make my top 10 companions. He wouldn't even make my runner-ups for the top 10 companions. But I like him okay. Honestly, because I've seen how much people do like him, and he had 2 spin-offs. A failed one with Sarah Jane called K9 and Company, and an Australian series, which I know nothing about, other than it's allegedly really, really bad. But in my opinion, because of that fan following and the fact he got 2 spin-offs, personally, I think K9 is the most overrated companion in the entire series. And it's just, because of the episodes I have seen, I'm still working on them, the animatronic just, it seemed it had issues. Like, I heard about a lot of the issues, like it's remote controlled and the camera signals often interfered with the remote control, and it was a whole thing. But, you know, like a lot of times where they relied on K9 in the story, they had to wait for the puppet, and it just, K9 caused a lot of stories to drag, I feel, because of those behind the scenes issues with the animatronic mainly. On audio, I think he works better, and in these last few stories, I think it's because Big Finish knows how to use him. They use him sparingly. But, you know, he's just always sort of been there, even then, you know. K9's always sort of been there. He's just kind of a plot device when the plot demands it. Like, if I were to describe K9 in the briefest way possible, I would say he is a sentient sonic screwdriver. But yeah, that's just how he's used. And one of the things I really like about Fever Island is that we're actually doing some focus on K9. By giving him these issues, we are exploring him a little more. And I like that. So yeah, there's that. And then back to the story. The Doctor and Anne go to explore Fever Island, where they run into Jason Vane, and he tells them about his mission, about Okolov, and then he says that Fever Island has been having this weird mist. And this is... do I want to go a little bit further, or... Yeah, I'll go a little bit further before I explain the big twist here. Basically, the mist starts... First of all, we learn that Fever Island has a secret research facility. And what they're researching, I'll get to. And this mist starts coming out. And, you know, everyone starts running from it because Jason has explained that this mist is not good. And then the Doctor gets consumed by it. And when the mist clears a little bit, the Doctor has turned into Okolov. And then we get the spoiler, the big twist, that Jason is not real. This is a fantasy, and the mist is feeding on his dreams, his perceptions. Which was a fun twist, because it turns this story from just your standard sort of spy, secret agent action story into a send-up of the spy stories. And every time we go to one of these send-up moments, it is just hilarious. Like, for example, Jason does these spoken memorandums. You know, memorandum from Jason Vane, and he begins narrating. And every time he does, after this point, Anne and one of the side characters are basically like, wait, what? What? Who are you talking to? We can hear you. And that's funny. And later, when the Doctor recovers, he talks first, when Jason says he's British intelligence, they ask if he's MI5, MI6, and he explains his backstory. I work for this secret organization called the Creche, headed by the Commodore, with our perky secretary. And then, after he says it, he's like, oh. You know, when you say it out loud, it sounds kind of ridiculous. And it's just, it gets very meta. I hate that phrase because I feel like there's kind of a negative connotation to it. But it gets very meta about setting up the spy genre. Later, when the Doctor recovers, they're talking about what this mist is, and he says, "Mr. Vane, prepare for a shocker. I don't think you're a real spy." And he's like, why would you say something like that? Because you are, if you'll excuse me, ridiculous. And like I said, there's a lot of serious things going on, but the humor is interjected so well, along with Tom Baker's delivery, that there is really no tonal whiplash, which I always enjoy when you try to mix genres, because it's really hard to do without without causing tonal whiplash. So yeah, and then we get sort of the gist of what's going on. This research facility has been experimenting with a rift into another dimension. And this rift is what's secreting the mist that is feeding on Jason's mental powers. No, not mental powers. He's not psychic, he's just a normal human being. It's feeding on his dreams, it's feeding on his fantasies. The washing machine is going. I hope you can't hear that. And yeah, and what I like is that towards in the climax of the story, the Doctor uses Jason's fantasies to close this rift. It's I can't explain it because I don't think I can do it justice. It's very creative how it's done. And it's interesting, too. I'll wrap up there, I guess. It's interesting, too, because even though, like The Enchantress of Numbers and Planet of the Drashigs, Fever Island doesn't tie into the overall arc, the Syndicate Master Plan, it sets up what the Doctor and Anne are going to face in the finale. It's a fun story, and it's a great send-up of the spy genre. I'm going to give Fever Island, I keep going back and forth on it, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. So that's it for Fever Island. Join me next week, hopefully, if I don't get behind again, when the Doctor and Anne will finally make real headway into tracking down the Syndicate. And secrets will be revealed in the first half of the 2-part finale, The Perfect Prisoners. So what did you think? Start a conversation in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, and then click that little bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. This is for Jedi Sentinel. No, this is not. I need to remember, I changed the channel name. This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom. And I will see you guys next time.